Hello and welcome to the history of Babylon 5. Today's episode, Londo Mollari's wives, Pestilence, Famine, and Death. For the most part, this will be a pretty straight canon video. However, some parts are going to come out of one of my favorite authors, Peter David, who wrote the episode and the novel. And here we go. Londo referred to Daggair and his other wives, at least to Viricado, as Famine, Pestilence, and Death, stating their personalities could shatter entire planets. Daggair was the oldest of the three wives. While not really loving Londo, Daggair fawned on him as a dutiful Centauri wife, as she was expected. She spent most of her marriage gossiping, interested in the latest politicking and social climbing, and spent great deals of Londo's money. As stated by the other wife, Timov, the vagaries of politics and social climbing has always been Daggair's field of endeavor. In 2259, Emperor Turin offered to grant Londo any one wish that he desired. He requested a divorce from the arranged marriages to his three wives, Daggair, Timov, and Mariel. One condition was presented, which was to keep at least one of the wives. He invited all three of them to come to Babylon 5 so he could deliver the news personally, just before having an anniversary party for his day of ascension. Whereas Timov made no pretenses regarding her feelings towards Londo, Daggair did what she could to ensure that she would be the one kept. During the party, a booby-trapped gift almost claimed Londo's life, leaving him seriously injured and in need of a blood transfusion. Daggair faces the situation calmly, hoping Londo will pass away, as he has not made his divorce decision public. However, Londo does recover, and he chooses to keep Timov because he always knew where he stood with her. He does offer Daggair a modest alimony as a settlement, but she will no longer be able to live the privileged life of a noblewoman as she became accustomed to. And we'll be right back after this. Timov, also known as Famine, daughter of Al Ghul, was one of Londo Mollari's wives. Timov married Londo Mollari in 2239, a marriage between their families. She was a young woman at the time, and was very quite taken with her new husband at first. Her illusions were eventually dispelled as the realities of being in a loveless marriage sunk in. According to Mariel, one of her co-wives, she still retained a very small measure of her old feelings, though she kept them well hidden. Unlike Mollari's other two wives, Mariel and Daggair, Timov made absolutely no pretense of affections for her husband, nor would she share a bed with him. She maintained that the secret to success of their marriage was their lack of communication. She felt nothing but disdain for Daggair and Mariel, and had no interest in court gossip, politics, or personal manipulations that the others seemed to delight in. In 2259, Emperor Turin offered to grant Mollari any one wish that he desired for his 30th anniversary of his day of ascension. Mollari's wish was that he be permitted to divorce from all three of his wives, though he did agree to the emperor's request that he keep one of the three women to appear with him at future state occasions. He subsequently invited Timov, Daggair, and Mariel to come to Babylon 5 so he could deliver the news to them personally, just before the celebration for his day of ascension. When Timov arrived on the station, she was met by Mollari's aide, Viricado, who was immediately terrified upon the domineering woman. Upon being informed of the news of the divorce, Timov did not alter her behavior in any way, while Mariel and Daggair sought out different ways to show their supported affections. She remained as impatient and disinterested in Mollari as ever. At the celebration of his day of ascension, Mollari was brought down by a booby-trapped gift purchased for the occasion by Mariel. The injury left him seriously hurt and in need of a blood transfusion. Timov shared in Mollari's blood type, but briefly considered allowing him to die, especially since he had not yet made the news of his pending divorces final, and also because of her knowledge of the questionable things he had done over the years. Ultimately, though, Timov chose to save Mollari, if only because she didn't want to win the battle between her and her husband in such a way. She agreed to provide the transfusion on the condition that Mollari never be told of her involvement, terms agreed to by the acting physician, Dr. Stephen Franklin. Mollari did learn of her involvement shortly afterwards, by way of a loose-lipped technician in MedLab, though he did not reveal his knowledge for at least some years. After his recovery, Mollari chose to keep Tamal as his sole remaining wife, declaring that he had chosen her because, with her, he always knew where he stood, showing his respect for her outspoken, no-nonsense manner. Tamal departed Babylon 5 after this, secretly finding that Mollari's respect for her honesty was rather charming in its own way. In 2262, Mollari eventually ascended to the throne, becoming the Emperor of the Centauri Republic. Tamal remained uninterested in involving herself in his life, and thus stayed away from the palace and the capital. A few years later, though, Tamal was contacted by Mollari's ward, who invited her to come and live in the palace. Tamal agreed to come and to stay there for the next couple of years, where she and Mollari began to reconcile and kindle a kind of romance. This happy time did not last, as Mollari worked with one of his ministers to frame Tamal for acting against the crown. He feared that if she remained close to him, she would discover the Drakh, who were controlling him and much of the Centauri Republic, resulting in her death at the hands of the Drakh, or worse, his own, in order to keep a secret. As a result of Mollari's actions, Tamal was banished from Centauri Prime, and she cursed him as they parted. The last years of Tamal's life were spent in exile, though she never truly stopped loving her husband even after all he had done to her. Tamal died quietly in December 2278, mere moments after Mollari met his own end at the hands of Shakar. And we'll be right back after this. Mariel was Londo's third wife, also known as Death. Before her marriage to Londo, a very young Mariel was courted by two promising noblemen in the military, Sola and Riva. Sola was the more promising, and at her father's instruction, Mariel willingly accepted his advances, much to Riva's consternation. Not willing to let the matter drop, Riva attempted to fight Solar for Mariel's hand, though he was soundly beaten. After which, Riva publicly swore vengeance against his rival suitor, and when Solar and his younger brother, Durla, both fell ill from poisoning, suspicion instantly fell on Riva. Though Durla survived, Sola eventually succumbed, and when the other members of the squad moved to arrest him, Riva very stupidly made the terminal error of resisting arrest. With both of Mariel's suitors dead, the late Sola's younger brother, Durla, approached Mariel and confessed his love for her. Mariel had only been interested in Sola and Riva because they had potential and were designated for greater things. She had no interest in Solar's lesser brother, the pathetic Durla, and cruelly dismissed the young man. Unknown to all at the time, it had actually been Durla who had poisoned both his brother and himself and allowed the blame to fall to Riva. Shortly thereafter, Mariel had become linked with the House Mollari, and her father arranged for her to be wed to the much older nobleman Londo Mollari. Unnoticed by either newlywed, Durla had attended the bonding ceremony. Mariel was the youngest of Londo's three wives by many years. Soft-spoken and beautiful, she lavished affection on Londo, but did not truly love him. She maintained numerous affairs, for as Londo once explained to Sheridan, she was attracted to men of power like a moth to flame, only she burned them. In 2259, Emperor Turin offered to grant Londo any one wish he desired, so he requested a divorce from all three wives. Mariel had somehow learned in advance what was going on, and not willing to chance him choosing someone else, arranged with an old associate of hers, Matthew Stoner, to have a Centauri artifact brought to Babylon 5, a statuette that had been booby-trapped by the Narns, to fire a poisoned dart when triggered by the touch of a Centauri. Stoner gave the artifact to a trader in the Zocalo, telling him that an elegant Centauri woman would come by and indicate that she wanted to purchase it by pointing at it. Mariel duly came to the trader and later pointed at the artifact, making the purchase. And because she wore gloves, as was the custom with Centauri ladies of her station, she was able to handle the deadly statue without triggering it. Whereas Tamal made no pretenses regarding her feelings towards Londo. Mariel, along with Daggair, put on a display of affection for him after arriving on the station, each endeavoring to be the one kept. Mariel gave the artifact to her husband at his Ascension Day party. The trap poisoned him, bringing him close to death. Mariel pouted and protested her innocence, though the other wives paid no attention to her. However, Londo did recover. While he was recuperating in Medlab, Mariel had a tryst with one of her lovers, none other than Londo's hated rival, Shakar, of the Narn regime. Shakar explained that he knew full well that she not only knew the device was trapped, but identified herself as the giver to throw suspicion elsewhere. Although he agreed to keep his conclusions to himself, he warned her Londo was likely to figure it out as well, though Mariel seemed unconcerned. Ultimately, Londo chose to keep Timov because he always knew where he stood with her. He did offer Mariel a modest alimony as a settlement, but she would no longer be able to live the privileged life of a noble. And we'll be right back after this. Later in life, as a discard, Mariel found herself something of a pariah in the Centauri social circles, a situation that only worsened as her ex-husband became the emperor. Living alone in her family's estate and running out of funds, she was composing a suicide note when she was visited by Throck Milfa and brought to Chancellor Casting Lawan. Based on the recommendation of Durla, who was now Minister of Internal Security, Lawan offered Mariel a job at the Centauri Republic's new espionage division, which was codenamed the Division of Public Works. Mariel accepted and recommended certain other individuals of her acquaintance, whom she felt would prove useful to the new division. As an agent of the Division of Public Works, Mariel traveled to Babylon 5 and set up a base there, seducing Centauri ambassador Vircato and using him to get herself into contact with various ambassadors and officials of the Interstellar Alliance. Mariel had little trouble in charming the male diplomats and officers, using her charisma to her advantage, even with species who would not find a Centauri physically attractive. She spent the next several months going between Babylon 5 and assorted planets. Her duplicity was eventually revealed by Vir via a young technomage named Cain. Seeking revenge on Mariel for making a fool of him, Vir had the technomage Galen cast a love spell on her, making her utterly devoted to Ambassador Kato. Vir then used her to get himself into the good graces of Durla and his cronies, the dominant faction of the Centauri royal court, and purposely lost her to Durla in a game of poker. Mariel became Vir's spy in Durla's midst. In 2271, Mariel and Durla were married around the same time that the latter was elected to prime minister. Hey, thank you for watching the history of Babylon 5. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you can. If you have, thank you. Special thanks to the Babylon Project for all information you heard today. Very special thanks to the contributors to the Babylon Project. Thank you all very much. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.